Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the South County Fire Regular Board meeting for Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. I will go ahead and call us to order. Ask everybody to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So first up is the approval of the agenda. You have the draft agenda in front of you. Is there anything else for the agenda? Anything else for the agenda? If not, I'll move adoption of the draft agenda. Second by Commissioner Chan. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. That takes us to the consent agenda. Item number 4, which has claims vouchers dated September 19, 2024, totaling $14,000, and claims vouchers dated October 1, 2024, in the amount of $913,368.74. I will move the adoption of the consent agenda. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Teofilak. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. That brings us to item number 5, which is approval of the meeting minutes. We have meeting minutes for September 10, 2024, the work session, and September 17, 2024, the regular meeting. I will move adoption of those 2 meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chan. It's been moved and seconded to adopt those meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. That moves us forward in the agenda to item number 6, which is public comment. And we'll start first in the room. Then we'll go online to our Zoom platform. Is there any request for public comment in the room here in the meeting room? Any request for public comment? Not seeing any request for public comment in the room. I'll move online and ask Ms. Blankenship to tell me, because I can't see if there is any request for on our Zoom platform for public comment.
There is not.
There is not. Okay, I'll come back to the room. Not seeing any requests for public comment. Thank you. We will then move forward in the agenda to item number 7, which is the Fire Chief's report. And good evening, Chief Eastman.
Good morning, Chair Kenny, Commissioners, staff, public, and liaisons. I'm going to have our communications director and our logistics chief to come up. I've got one thing, and right now before they start is just for the board. I got an email from the chief of District 21, and it was in regards to a request for proposal, or I think that's what it was, request for proposal. If you're not aware, when they passed their last EMS levy, they passed it with the vision to put paramedics in District 21. They currently contract with, or currently have an agreement with North County Fire to provide those services. And when they passed that levy, they have a citizen advisory group up there that helped them. And the intent and the vision when they passed and successfully passed the levy was to have medics in their fire station, not coming from the city of Arlington, but having them within the geopolitical boundaries of District 21. I just want to let the board know I got that request. I called their chief and said, I can't give you a response by the 9th of October. But staff is looking at it to look at what the feasibility is. I guess what I will say is what intrigued me about it is this. We've been talking about, PTSD and some of the challenges that we face just within our own organization with the folks on the engines and the aid cars and ambulance or medic units. If they need a break from the response side of what we do, I really don't have any place to put them. We've talked about potentially having the fire marshal's office be a place where we can provide purpose and mission, and it's a need of the RFA moving forward. But other than that, what happens now is if we don't have a place to put them, they go on L&I. And some of that is presumptive under the eyes of the state. And so they go out on disability under LNI, and sometimes they come back and sometimes they retire out. So one of the intriguing things about this for me is Arlington Heights is a much more rural community. They have much less call demand, and it may be something. And one of the things that intrigued me about the concept of this is it could be a place where, I could take one of our paramedics who has seen a lot, have them go out, provide mission and purpose at a reduced pace, give them a little bit of break, and then be able to rotate folks out of there and use that as a potential. That's what intrigues me about it. Obviously, we just got it this week or late last week. And so, the assistant chiefs are looking at it, and HR directors are looking at it to see if it's even something we can consider. The benefit it does for District 21 is they would work as us, and it would allow them time to get the rest of the policies that they need in place. It would provide, we'd give them more seasoned medics, more experienced medics. One of the challenges with smaller agencies when they provide ALS service for the first time is they don't have a lot of call demand. They're usually on a much tighter budget, and they just have more hurdles to provide the service and maintain readiness for the folks that are doing the work, and have much less margin for error because, and it's typically a little bit more expensive. So we could provide that. I think it's something that would easily be doable. But once again, medics are a commodity. They're in short supply. And I just want to let the board know that I got that request. Staff is working through it. We will probably have a conversation with the next intergovernmental meeting as a result, and bring back to you at a future meeting when staff has had time to actually look at what that actually means, and if there's a way we could actually, and I see it as a win-win. I don't see it I see it as a win-win. So expect to see that coming back sometime in the future. Whether even if staff doesn't think we can do it today, there are smaller agencies that will over time want to provide that level of service for the citizens, and it may not be right today, but it may be right tomorrow. So more to come on that. I just wanted to let you know that we received that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christy first, and then to James.
And I think this might be more for Chief Curtis. He can give us some information on the new refurbished pumper that we just took.
So we'll take a team approach on it. We'll take a team approach on this tonight. Good evening, board chair, commissioners, and liaisons. I'm going to share this slide with you. You may have seen it shared on social media. We just received our second of 3 refurbished pumpers. This particular one served several years at our Fire Station 12. It's a 2006 Spartan H&W pumper. So this is the rig that went down just shy of a year ago, and it was returned yesterday, as a matter of fact, and in very satisfactory condition. And it's going to serve the citizens of the Hilltop community at Station 22 for the near term, and hopefully at our new Fire Station 22 off of North Road soon thereafter. That's all I got on that. Would you like me to, I'll continue with quick logistics, and then I'll turn it back over to Christy. So along with an update is we just went live yesterday with our locution update. That's our fire station alerting system at Fire Station 15. There was some delays due to labor strikes, but nonetheless, we got that project on the ground and installed in short order. It has performed for the last, I want to say, 36 hours flawlessly, knock on wood. We're very happy with the install. We're very happy with the product, and we're now moving on to the next station, which is going to be Station 11, followed by Station 10. Soon I'll be sitting before you with another phase of the project, because it's a multi-phase project, and that'll include our next 4 stations. And the goal is all RFA-owned fire stations will be upgraded to the new fire station alerting system.
Chief, could you elaborate on what that is for us that have forgotten what a locution is?
Yes, so Locution is a name brand specific, but what it is it's a system that triggers an alert when the fire station gets a call. So for example, at Fire Station 15, we employed a system that's called zoned alerting. So typically the station will get alerted, but now we have it set up so that Engine 15 will get an alert separate from Medic 15 or Aid 15 or Battalion 15. And that includes the sleeping quarters, but altogether it will trigger the gas range to shut off for safety purposes. It'll turn the lights on. It's got different lighting in bedrooms than it does in the exit ways. And there's a lot of modern features in this system. We've recognized that the delay that was built in before with the system that we call Nighthawk isn't there anymore because this is all internet-based, has an IP address, and it's instantaneous. Snowcom or Snow 91 hosts the server, so it's instant real-time alerting, and it's also set up so that if multiple stations are getting alerted at the same time, if there's call stacking, that alleviates that, and it's just instantaneous alerting. And then the system that's called Locution will take over based on that information it receives in that text string, for lack of better terms, and dispatch it automatically to the crews. And that coincides with Snow 911's alerting over the air as well. So we're very excited about that, and we couldn't get there without the board's support. So thank you very much. And then on the last part under logistics, I received a communication from the fire chief of Central Whidbey Island, Chief Helm, asking if we had the ability to share a medic unit. We haven't discussed the details yet, but I just wanted to prep the board that once we work out the details, Central Whidbey is asking for a loaner aid unit for a period of time in the event that they have to take on BLS transports from their hospital-based system. This is just a preliminary ask, and we'll have an interlocal agreement drafted up unless the board objects. But their challenge is the build times on medic units are exceeding 24 to 36 months, and they're finding themselves in a situation where they're asking their neighbors for some help. We have a medic unit that we've identified, possibly two, that would be surplus in the near future that are perfect candidates for this agency. So unless the board objects, I'll work with Chief Eastman on that, and we'll present something to the board in the very near future. And that concludes the logistics update.
Any questions for Chief Curtis on that logistics update? Commissioner Fernhoff and then Commissioner Chan.
Yes, Chief, thank you for the report. Could you remind us the cost savings that we had on the refurb for the fire engine? I think that's a significant contrast point that it wasn't listed in there, I don't believe.
Absolutely. So we have two fire engines that are in the build stage right now, and those rigs are 36 months from time of order to delivery. Also, they're approaching $950,000, and this refurbishment that we're looking at, this particular one, I want to say is in the neighborhood of 425 to 435. So about half the cost, and it was done in just about a year. They were a very good company to work with, and we've actually had some other inquiries from other agencies asking about our experience.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much, sort of on behalf of the board, of being a good steward of the taxpayer dollar and also supporting our citizens. So thank you very much for all the efforts.
Absolutely. And might I add, we do have one more pumper that's down there. It's 2 months behind this one. That was the old engine 19 from Mount Lake Terrace. It was actually purchased from Mount Lake Terrace back in, I want to say 2001, perhaps. It was also a good candidate for this refurbishment, and it served many years there as it did at our new Station 10 back in the day when we opened that station at 156th and Highway 99. And since then, it's served as reserve, but we'll find a new home for that one as well. And I expect to see that back in the RFA probably around December.
Commissioner Chan.
Well, actually, he just took the question away from me, but I appreciate you get it. No, Commissioner Kafano just took the question away. Did you saw my notes in here? No, I really appreciate that. I think that not more importantly, I think I like you guys creative, kind of self-starter, creative to say that. So we're gonna cut your budget by $150,000?
We had to think outside the box, and this was
No,
creative thinking.
no, that's,
so.
I think that's what this organization, all the staff have been, creative. I think that's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Curtis? Okay, Ms. Valley?
Thank you, commissioners. We had the honor of hosting our retirement and promotional ceremony over the weekend. Thank you to those of you who were able to attend. We honored dozens of years of service from our firefighters who have retired over the past year, and we're able to congratulate so many who are taking on new responsibilities in their promotions for the RFA. It was a great ceremony, great attendance there. Also, this weekend, we completed our fall CERT class. So that was a 3-day course that teaches residents who are not first responders how to be prepared for disasters and some really basic response skills like, first aid, basic search and rescue, and things like that. We had 26 students. We were very pleased to have among those students Edmonds City Council member Vivian Olson and Mount Lake Terrace City Council member Aaron Murray. So thank you to both of them. The feedback from them and from all of the other students was really good for this class. So that was great. And then we wanted to let all of you know that coming up this Saturday, we do have our annual Fire Prevention Week open house at Martha Lake Station 21. We'd love to see you there. It's from 11 to 1, and everyone in the community is also welcome to come meet firefighters, spray a fire hose, and learn how to keep your family safer. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Chief, did you have some more?
Yeah, I
on the chief's
do.
report?
I don't know if you've watched the snippets of the news or I want to say it's been in Everett Herald. I know Chief Isotela gave you guys brief when we did the live burns and some of the training we did in Snohomish, and they had and I don't have the report done yet. We should have it here soon. They had where there was a potential exposure to asbestos. I know you got the brief on it from Chief Isotelo and the Everett Herald and Fox 13 News wanted to do some reporting on it. Christy's been working on that with our partners with both District 7 and District 4. And I just want to let you know we're aware of it and nothing's changed. The exposure risk was very minimal. And my understanding is from the fire department's perspective, we did everything as we were supposed to do it. And we'll, as soon as we get the report, the safety report out, I'll make sure I get a copy of that to the board. But I just wanted to let I know Christy sent out and said, here's a press release that's coming. It got a little bit more traction. I don't think it was a lot. I think the section on Fox 13 News was 15, 20 seconds was all. But I just want to let the board know we're aware of it, and we're expecting to get their safety report here in the next couple of weeks. And when I get that, I'll forward that to the board. And that concludes my chief's report.
Thank you, Chief. Questions from the board for Chief Eastman on the chief's report? Any questions for the chief? If not, thank you, Chief Eastman. That moves us forward in the agenda to number 8, our legal report. And we have Rich Davis, our attorney, on Zoom. Good evening, Mr. Davis.
Good evening, commissioners. I wanted to mention a rule that was just passed by the Department of Justice a couple months ago. A final rule was issued that implements a portion of Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the implementation date for this is some ways off into the future, April 26, 2027. However, you're going to hear a lot more about this between now and then, and I just wanted to make you aware of what's coming. So there's been a longstanding mandate in Title II requiring state and local governments to provide individuals who have disabilities with effective communication, reasonable modifications, equal opportunities to participate in government services. This rule, what it does is it addresses things that are posted online. So your social media, any kind of content that you post to the web. and it requires folks with disabilities to have greater access to that information. It essentially covers 4 different areas, and I just wanted to touch upon those. The first one is perceivable. So governments will have to, and by the way, this applies to kind of small cities of 50,000 or less and all special purpose districts. So fire districts are covered, RFAs are covered, and South County Fire will be covered by this. We'll be providing a memo to South County Fire that kind of outlines this. And then, as I said, there'll be a lot of work between now and the implementation date. But 4 kinds of factors that need to be addressed to make material accessible. First of all, it has to be perceivable, which means that information must be presented to the users in a way that they can perceive. So that might mean text alternatives for any non-text content. So they can be changed into other forms like large print, braille, speech, or simpler language. Time-based media, so things like pre-recorded audio or pre-recorded video, you may need to have captions or audio descriptions or something like that. It has to be adaptable, which means it has to be presentable in different ways without losing the information or the structure of what is being presented. The second thing is it has to be operable. In other words, it has to be easy to use. So all of the content needs to be accessible just by using the keyboard. There has to be enough time. So if someone is slow to access information, the content has to be present long enough to allow users enough time to read the content. It has to prevent seizures and physical reactions that some individuals may experience by engaging with web content. Third, it has to be understandable. So that means it needs to be predictable, requires making web pages operate and appear in predictable ways. And it requires that the web page offer assistance to users by avoiding or correcting the mistakes that they may have input into search bars or things of that nature. And finally, it has to be robust. And what that means is it has to keep up with current technology, current and future technology. So there's going to be a lot of work to be done on websites. The good news is things that are archived or posts that are already made are exempt from this requirement. So you won't have to retroactively go back and make changes to posts that have been done in the past, but for future posts, these factors will apply. And so again, there's basically 2.5 years before the implementation date, but this is something that will be coming down the pike at some point here, and we're going to recommend a policy be adopted with certain provisions in it to basically, one of which is essentially have a czar who's in charge of this, because the rule is actually very complex and has a lot of things that somebody needs to become an expert in. So again, just a kind of a high level overview to give you an idea of what's coming down the road in a couple of years. And with that, that's all I have for tonight.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Davis? Commissioner Lawrence?
Yeah, Richard. So this is the Justice Department. They don't make laws, so this must be like an interpretation of a law.
Yeah, the Justice Department issued a final rule that revised regulations that implemented Title II. And so they are, like any agency, they go through a rulemaking process, they take public comment, and then they pass a final rule. And that's what they did in this case.
That originally came from Congress then?
Yes, Title II did, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Davis? If not, great. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Moving forward in the agenda, then we have item number 9, the union report, and we have President Moore on Zoom. Good evening, President Moore.
Good evening, commissioners. Thanks for having me here. I wanted to kind of just start off tonight a little bit with our report it's the first we've heard from our administration that the RFP request was received for the medics up there. And I would tell you right now, we did hear about it last week. And from the labor side of things, we would adamantly oppose even the consideration of this. I appreciate, Chief Eastman's comments thinking that, it's potentially a way to help with the mental health issues and whatnot of our responders. But I think we have some ways that we can go ahead and take care of that internally first by taking care of some of our real staffing issues that are causing problems for our members. When we have units that have high utilization rates, and we are not adding any additional units, it does have a correlation and an impact on our members. And so I've heard the board on here, obviously multiple months and whatnot, talking as we lead into budget presentation, talking about, hey, we have the need for some infill fire stations, all this kind of stuff. But what we're not hearing is that there's going to be anything being done moving forward this next year. It's sounding like pretty much a status quo as far as our deployment goes. And it's just, it's kind of disheartening right now. I got beat up. I had a union meeting this week, I'll be honest with you, and heard from our membership and got pretty dang beat up over the fact of what potentially is going to happen or not happen this next year. Our members are pretty upset about the fact that Mountain Lake Terrace and Briar were brought into the RFA. And since that's been done, there's been no increase to the staffing levels down there. Yet we've collected more money, obviously, by the benefit charge coming in. The staffing levels down there have remained the same for, Mountain Lake Terrace for 28 years and Briar almost 20 years. And so, yet call volume and everything has increased down there, population's increased, the demands there. The local also just recently went out and supported the benefit charge for the organization. And I'm not advocating, the union's definitely not advocating to being, the leprechaun going out and trying to get into the gold pot and take the whole pot. That's not what we're asking. But we are asking, hey, let's use this thing if we need to. And we have some real needs. When we talk about infill fire stations, we got to hire the people now. It takes a year for us to really see the realization of those individuals. And so if we hire them later, if we wait till 2026 or beyond, we're going to be way behind the curve on this. And so I would just implore you guys, as you guys are considering the budget, take a real look at what other things that you've talked about in the past and our needs and that benefit charge. And I'm not asking again for, you to take a whole bite out of that, but a little bit would go ahead and make a big difference as far as our capabilities and whatnot, obviously within the RFA. And it's taken its toll on our membership, who's the ones engaging with these taxpayers and our constituents on a daily basis and having to face them. And so that's kind of just what I wanted to say. I hope that's not coming across as being confrontational. I'm not trying to be confrontational with you guys or anything. It's just a concern that our membership has, and I'm taking a lot of heat right now. From or not heat necessarily, but I'm fielding a lot of frustration right now with it. And it's kind of hard when we say, we got the city of Edmonds and whatnot, and them looking at potentially coming in, but yet we're not taking care of the issues we have internally in the RFA boundaries that are already paying the full freight. And so I understand, the discussions around trying to keep the benefit charge down low for the city of Edmonds and everything. There's lots of different stuff out there about that, but at some point, we've got to take care of what we have here first. And the city of Edmonds is going to have to figure out their budget themselves. That's their problem that they're going to have to figure out. We support it, but you know what? They don't really have much that they can do with that. So we know that they can't afford their own fire department currently. And so I'm just tired of us seeing, putting off doing what we need to do for the potential of, what's going to happen with the city of Edmonds. And yet then we're looking at, potentially an RFP request for medic services. When we have medics that have been historically, for us anyways, getting mandatory substantially. We finally, through deployment changes and whatnot that were recently done, we finally were able to start getting some reprieve for those paramedics that they weren't getting mandatory as much as they are. They still get mandatory, but not as much as they were. So I don't see how personally putting a higher demand on more medics that we need and staffing some other agency would be responsible, I guess. So, again, commissioners, I hope I'm not coming across as confrontational, because I truly am not trying to. It's just some frustration that we have and wanting to have some conversations with you guys more about this, and I would be happy to. So with that being said, commissioners, I apologize. I've taken a lot of your time, but if you got any questions, I'd be happy to answer or try to.
Thank you, President Moore. Any questions from the commissioners for President Moore? Any questions? Nope. Okay, President Moore, thank you. All right, moving forward in the agenda then, we have item number 10, which is unfinished business, and that starts with the fire chief's preliminary budget for 2025.
Good evening again. I guess I'd like to start. I'm glad we're able to present our draft budget for the board tonight. From an organizational perspective, we've done things a little bit different administratively. I thank the board for their patience as we work through kind of what we do from an administrative perspective and work on making this process. I think my goal is that every time we talk to you about the budget, we're looking 3 to 5 years out. We roll things back. And the goal being is that we don't want to have surprises in the out years about things we need and places we're going and have that be a constant conversation we have. We're fortunate, unlike cities where, you know, we have a main priority, which is providing fire and EMS and the associated services. And we're in that perspective, we're single focus. So we can talk about this, you know, quite frankly, all year long. And, you know, as we will start doing that in the first quarter of next year, talking about staffing, deployment, long-term strategy, long-term plan, as we talk about current needs, future needs, and the other staffing challenges we face, as we look at the facilities planning and infill fire stations or the potential of infill fire stations and where growth takes us, and hopefully have a 5 to 7 to 8 to 10 year strategy on how to do that. You can't get there overnight. I think you have to be very deliberate, and at the same time, we have to be flexible, and be able to stay nimble as we do that, and at the same time, make sure that the folks we serve understand where we're going, why we're going there, and the impact and the resources that are needed to get to that place. I look forward to that conversation starting hopefully in January. I'm not sure exactly where Jason, Todd, Sean, and Chris and the rest of the team are with the work that they've been doing. But I'm hoping that we start that conversation shortly after the first of the year. And it kind of will dovetail into, you know, all the other things we have going for, you know, capital studies plan and what's going to be this long-term strategy for that. There's a lot of things that, you know, it's one thing to have a conversation about your expense plan or your budget for 1 year, but the things we're talking about and what we're looking and strategizing forward is not for 26. It's for, you know, 2030, 2032, and work our way backwards. And how do we get to that place? And quite frankly, strategically, how do we resource it? And then for staff to continue to provide the data that is required for the ask that we're asking for. And it's not just operation stuff. It's not just the work we do in the streets. It's the work that's being done in this building to support that effort. You know, I know we are lean. I know we're lean operationally. I know we're lean administratively. But we can't just say we want, and I think I've committed this to the board, is that as we go and ask for things, whether that's people or other resources, that we would do our due diligence from a staff perspective to ensure that we've created the efficiencies we could create. We've identified the gaps and the gaps that we actually can't fill with those efficiencies or with resources we currently have, and then provide you the reason we need, if it's a person, what that person is, what they do. If it's resources in the street, why we need them, what we think it'll accomplish. And if it's technology or some of those other pieces, we'd be able to clearly articulate from a staff's perspective why those needs are needed. And provide the board with all the information so you can make an informed decision as you guys approve budget, and then strategically moving forward, plan for resourcing what we're talking about. I want to thank the executive staff. They were very instrumental in the budget that's being presented to you today. It doesn't have everything in it I wanted. I really thought we would have a little bit more capacity to add some additional resources. And as it turns out, when you look at an organization of our size, and the budget that we have, and what the increase goes up annually just to maintain status quo, and I think CFO Bothwell articulated that early in the process of about 5.7 million. And then you look at the limitations we have in property tax. And the challenges we have with our benefit charge as a result of right now, we just renewed it. It's not a large portion of our resource stream. And when we're now at a place where those 1% limitations, we've been very fortunate with the annexations and some of those things to be able to cover, the high inflation years that we had, and have been able to do that very well, keeping us at the 1% increases in property taxes, both EMS and fire. So, but there's going to be a much larger conversation about what our long-term resource strategy is. Staff looks forward to that conversation with the board in 25, early in 25. And I'm proud to present to you my 2025 budget. And with that, I'm going to turn over the detail work to CFO Bothwell.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening, Mr. Bothwell.
All right, so tonight is an important milestone in the process. This is when we're handing over the administration's budget proposal. So we've spent a lot of time getting to this point, and it officially signals the beginning of your budget deliberations. So tonight, I'm going to start with a financial summary, and we've spent a lot of time talking about the status quo budget up until now. And so what I'm going to do is use that as a baseline or a starting point, and I'm going to talk about the things that are in the chief's preliminary budget that are in addition to the status quo budget. I'm also going to talk about the results of the budget proposal. So what does it mean overall for the organization and the health of the organization? And then at the end, I've got 3 resolutions that are unique to 2025. And previously I presented this topic and I said I've got 2 of them. I had actually forgotten about one of them, and that's the resolution to change or update the rates for ambulance transports. And so that's in your packet materials as well. And that's the 3rd one. And I will talk about that in detail in just a minute. All right, so this is what is in addition to the status quo budget. So there's 6 items here. Just as a reminder, revenues for status quo are the current revenue mix with historical increases. That's 1% increase in property tax, tax on new construction, and 2% on the benefit charge. Everything else is just is forecasted based on some external factors. So there's 2 increases to revenue. The first one is about $1,075,000 of banked property tax capacity. So the chief's preliminary budget takes that value of our banked property tax capacity in 2025. The other piece here is the ambulance transport rates increase for $400,000. That $400,000 is the result of increasing those rates, and that is recommended in the chief's preliminary budget. So for expenditures, we talked to you over the last 2 meetings about 5 high priority items that the administration was advancing for consideration. All 5 of those items are in the chief's preliminary budget. And on this slide, I've parsed those out between one-time items and ongoing items. So the one-time items, the cost of those is about $750,000. And then the ongoing items have a cost of $564,000, and that's ongoing. For capital and reserves, we have underfunded apparatus. There's a contribution towards the capital fund to fund those for $2.2 million. And that's the result of apparatus that we have currently in production that we've signed contracts on, and those have come before the board over the last couple of years and that were underfunded. And so we knew we needed to do something with those, and those are coming due. We're going to hopefully take delivery of those in the next year or year and a half. And so the chief's preliminary budget includes funding to fund that underfunded portion of those. And then this final item is not an expenditure. It's a transfer out of the general fund into a new fund that's being proposed, and that's the Revenue Stabilization Fund. And the value of that transfer out is $4.45 million. And I'll talk about that one a little bit more too. So the results of the budget proposal are a current year operating deficit of $4,026,000. And this number is really important for a couple reasons. It's the number that we're using in the long range forecast. It also it's the result of the structural deficit. So this is the ongoing deficit without any one-time items or things like transfers out for new funds and that kind of thing. So the other item that we've got here is one-time fund balance drawdown. That's $2.2 million. That's to fund the unfunded apparatus or underfunded apparatus. So we've got a budgeted expenditure deficit of $6.2 million. And that's not the amount that you'd see on a budget resolution that was based on this budget, though. There's the non-expenditure transfer out to establish the new fund, and that the cost of that is just under $4.5 million. So what you'd see on a budget resolution for the chief's preliminary budget would be a deficit or an outflow of resources out of the general fund of about $10.7 million. I do want to mention that underspend is not considered on this slide. So the underspend would be related to the very first item there, the current year operating deficit. If we see savings based on underspending the budget, and historically we calculated from 2021 through present, the average underspend is about $3.7 million. So if that holds true for 2025, we would expect to see an actual deficit of less than $1 million. It would be, based on these numbers, it would be closer to $300,000. So we're pretty close to even. So just some notes about the proposal. The budget proposal is balanced, meaning that we've identified resources to fully implement this budget. All of our financial targets and commitments are met with this budget. So our minimum fund balance targets, our reserve requirements that are external to the organization are met, and all of our cash flow requirements and everything. Contributions to future capital replacements are fully funded except the CFP. So the capital facilities plan, obviously raising and rebuilding fire stations and doing the major projects that are in that document are not funded. We do fund a $500,000 contribution to major facilities maintenance, as well as fully funding the annual set-asides for equipment and apparatus. And all of our reserves and fund forecasts are healthy. So there's really nothing hidden in here. The budget proposal continues the RFA's tradition of excellent financial health. So I wanted to just pause and ask if there's any questions before I move on, and I'll talk about the resolutions that are unique to 2025.
Sure. Yes, Commissioner Fernand, then Commissioner Chan.
Thank you, CFO Bothwell. Great report. I just have a question regarding the apparatus. You said we're underfunded for them. Is that because we made, and I don't want to get wrapped around the axle on this, so to speak, but did we choose not to put a deposit down, or we did something as far as not putting money forward or holding money in reserve and getting interest on it, and then with an expectation later that we would apply it? Is that what we did?
So we did have that conversation. So this
Okay.
is unrelated to that, though.
Okay, never mind. Thank you.
Commissioner Chan?
Yeah, so I got no confusion here. So right now you're talking about budget deficit of $10 million?
That would be what we put on a budget resolution, yes.
Okay. So how are we gonna balance that budget? Are we gonna put more in? But you took out the $4.45 million, the new fund, take it from general fund
Right.
to,
Right. So the proposal funds about $4.5 million, taking that out of fund balance and putting into a special revenue fund, which would be the Revenue Stabilization Fund. So that's not that's not expenditure authority. That's effectively kind of taking the money out of one pocket and putting it into another one.
right, but then we had to stabilize it. We were by 90 days, right? So to to meet that requirement, you take that money out as a state?
So we will have that requirement in the general fund at the end of 2025, based on the
Right.
chief's preliminary budget. We'll have 90 days of operating cash. This money would be, so when I get to the resolution, I'll show you the specifics of what this new fund would look like. And one of the things that we're proposing to do is create a policy that says that when we measure general fund ending fund balance against that
Right.
target, that we would include whatever's in the revenue stabilization fund.
So when you say, so really not really correct to say total deficit $10 million. Yeah,
I 100% agree with you,
Yeah.
right? And that's sort of why I laid the slide out like this. It doesn't represent actual expenditure authority. It's literally like taking the money out of one pocket and putting it in
see,
the other.
I don't like the word deficit and by that. But also I saw that you have a $7,000 for the left one report. Can you share that with me?
The what?
You pay left one evaluation report.
Oh, like, yeah, our GASB 75. Yeah, that's for, we have that done for financial statements. Do you want to copy that report?
Yeah, I like.
We get two of them.
I like to know what really total if we're funding the whole left one, how much it is. I always pay attention. Just give you a history I always like to set the fund aside for the left one. The board just likes to pay as a go, but I do concern. I want to look at that number, see what is our exposure.
Yeah, I
that
can,
one.
those are done on a calendar year basis, and I can send you our most recent ones.
Okay,
By policy for left one, what we fund in the budget is 125% of our expected expenditures in
Yeah,
the next coming year.
that's our big debate with
Yeah.
Commissioner Kenny. At one time, the numbers really low, and now I just want to know what my exposures are.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
yep. And the balance that we accumulate in the left one fund actually for the purposes of that report are credited against the liability in the future too. But I'll forward you those reports.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. So actually, I go back to, so we're gonna take the banking capacity, right? We're gonna take that.
So we have almost $8 million in bank capacity, and the chief's preliminary budget suggests that we would use just over $1 million of that.
What is our limit on? Only take $1 million. Can we take more?
You could take all $8 million.
Right. Yeah, let's have a discussions on that, I think. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's
Thank you.
good.
Go ahead. Okay.
Go ahead.
So we're going to bring you the entire budget package with all the resolutions, and there's going to be almost 10 this year, to the October 15th meeting when we have the public hearing on the budget, revenues, and the benefit charge. But I wanted to highlight just 3 of them that are unique to this year for you. And I just touched on these before, but I put draft resolutions in your packet. And I want to disclose that these have not been reviewed by legal. What we're trying to do here is get the policy considerations in front of you in advance of kind of finishing these up. So the first one is a resolution to establish a revenue stabilization fund. The second is to update ambulance transports rates. And then the third would be to retroactively implement the administrative salary survey. So I'll talk about each one of these. And so the resolution to create a revenue stabilization fund would create a special revenue fund type. So it'd be just like your current emergency fund that the board has control over. We would manage it in a manner consistent with existing policies and procedures. So very similar to the fund that we already have that's kind of similar to this, that is exclusively controlled by the board without any restrictions. And the allowable uses that are in the described in the draft resolution are to provide funding for revenue disruptions, funding shortfalls, to balance the annual budget, or for any other governmental purpose authorized by the Board of Commissioners. So it gives you a flavor of what this money is being set aside for, but there's also quite a bit of wiggle room in that last statement about any purpose being authorized by the board. And it is included, I touched on this earlier, but there's a policy, a change to our comprehensive financial management policies to explicitly state that it's included in the measurement of general fund ending fund balance when we measure the actual forecasted ending fund balance against the target. This next one is to update our ambulance transport rates. So the resolution would actually update those rates to the median of our comparable entities. And just as a reminder, we've not updated our rates since since the RFA was formed. The increase would primarily affect commercial payers. And the second piece of this is that there's a policy where we would create a policy to administratively update the rates annually based on inflation. And that's CPIW that's the driver for most of our costs and our labor costs. And so the actual policy that's drafted would say that ambulance transport rates shall be increased or decreased by the most recently published June to June CPIW for Seattle, Bellevue, Tacoma. The annual update shall happen administratively without board action and shall be effective on January 1 of the following year. And then this final resolution is retroactive implementation of the administrative salary survey. There's been some timeline challenges based on the service provider. And so the resolution that's in your packet would allow for retroactive implementation of the survey results. And that is the end of the 3 special ones that we have for you and the end of my presentation. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Fernhoff.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the, again, detailed presentation. Well done to everybody. I was just wondering if you could do me personally a small favor. Could you remove my name as vice chair from these resolutions that are currently in our packet?
I apologize for that.
No,
Melissa
I'm
pointed
sure
that
it's
out as
just an
well.
oversight.
I
Just an
put, yep.
oversight.
Yeah, I apologize. I used the resolutions from, I think,
get it.
probably last year.
Okay.
That's where I was starting from, so.
One other question. I don't know that Medicare ever raises its compensation for ambulance services. We don't base what we're doing to charge more for our services based on any increase in what federal subsidies are, right? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Teofilo.
For the annual salary survey, the retroactive, that means like we would retroactively increase people's pay according to a certain date. So they would kind of get like a one-time bonus to compensate.
So just mechanically how this works is that we have to, if we're going to do anything with compensation that goes backwards, we have to pass a resolution saying that's our intention to do this. And historically, this organization has only done that for the chief's salary if they aren't able to produce, if the board isn't able to agree on or produce whatever the increase is going to be for the next year. So we basically just sort of modeled that. And Chief can tell you more about that.
So I know we used Archbright to help us with the salary survey and David's not here. He's actually at a class. Our director, Colin. And as a result, Archbright took this scope of business and are not doing it anymore. And so we were in the process of having them do ours. And so there is a delay and I don't believe we've had a salary survey for the non-represented. It's been over 3 years. And so to be fair to the employee group, from my perspective, and at that I would ask, and the resolutions in there because I asked for it, is that the salary survey, the intent was to have it done prior to the budget process, so we could have had a conversation as part of the budget and made it part of the 2025 budget. But as a result of things that were outside our control, we'd like the results of the salary survey once the board approves to be retro and be effective January 1 if it takes us a little bit longer to do that, rather than because I think the employee group that does the work for us that are now represented, from the chief's perspective, I think I owe that to them. As a result, this was at no fault of them and quite frankly with the vendor we were using, and it's been over 3 years since we did it. It's a little bit unique. We haven't done that before, but that's the request from me and why it's in the budget packet.
So yeah, retroactive January 1, 2025. Cool.
Other questions? Commissioner Chan.
Do we have to pass, you are not going to pass a resolution today, right?
Oh, no,
Okay.
just for discussion.
Yeah, I do have, I think that's why I'm trying to promote using general accepted accounting principle gap, because this, I know a lot of people watching us and saying the word $10 million deficit doesn't sound good to me. So I gotta take a look at that and make sure that, it does not make sense. Eventually we have a consolidated number, right? So that would not show a deficit.
That's a great point. So when we consolidate our financial statements, if we were to, if the budget were to pass the way that it currently sits and we created this new fund, those funds, the general fund, the revenue stabilization fund, and then and I don't know, I think it's the RFA emergency fund is what it's called. It's the board's.
Rainy day fund at one
Rainy
time.
day fund.
Yeah.
Those all get collapsed into the general fund and reported as the general fund. And the reason for that is that the restrictions on that money or on those different funds are all board imposed restrictions. So you could roll all of those funds back into the general fund at any time. There's no color money issues or externally imposed restrictions. And so for financial statement purposes, we roll those in. And during that process, we would eliminate the transactions. So we wouldn't show the full $10 million going out of the general fund.
Right.
It would actually just wash. We would eliminate that
But
transaction.
I
altogether.
really think accrued basis is much more really effectively measured how much we got in, how much we use and expenses, more to performance, financial performance, much more better to perform than, the cash and stuff like that. And then we also put projecting GMT for 2025 is going to be less. Right?
For 2025, we forecasted it using a 3-year moving average. So we're not, well, it's less than 2024 because we got a big payment. We're expecting to get a big payment in 2024. Remember, we got $4.2 million more than we budgeted. So that was a spike. So that
Right.
influences the 3-year moving average that we forecast 2025 based on, but we're expecting to get a full year of 2025 revenue.
So it's possible they go back up again. So that might able to, well, I don't want to take too much time, but I think we need to see what we look like. The number, if we can consolidate, see what we look like. Yeah,
Okay.
that'll be good. Thank you.
Commissioner Rowland?
Yeah, just a few questions. So if I understand the revenue stabilization fund, it's just putting it into a different bucket. It already exists right now in the emergency fund and we're splitting out of there, or it's money that's in the general fund that we're additionally splitting out.
The latter, it's in the general fund.
Okay, so I guess what really is the difference then between the usage of the emergency fund and this fund? What's the benefit of having this as another bucket on the list?
But that's a great question. So there's a couple reasons. It's sort of it is sort of a rainy day fund, right? So we know that we're looking at losses in GEMT that are probable in the next few years. We have things like currently we have the fire marshal contract revenue that's taking $1 million hit this year. Those kinds of things tend to happen. So this money would be set aside for those types of events in the future, including the ones that are sort of at our doorstep. The other thing about it is that we have, it's once it sits in general fund, it becomes in general fund balance, it becomes one-time resources. And so it's really not useful as to fund ongoing operations. And so carving some of that out and putting it in a rainy day fund or looking for opportunities to spend that on one-time items is a great thing to do. And it's consistent with our policies. Our policies say that we'll use one-time money for one-time things only and not to fund operations. And so putting it over there as a rainy day fund is it's just smart financial management. It doesn't necessarily change things. It just creates a structure. It gives some structure to that money where it doesn't have any structure sitting in the general fund.
I guess for simplicity, my question, I'm a little bit naive when it comes to finances of this magnitude sometimes. Why not just increase the emergency fund and just pull it from there?
You could 100% do that.
Is there a benefit or is there
well, we don't
a
have
risk?
The current I think it's called the emergency fund or the board contingency fund. I can't remember exactly what it's called. It doesn't have really, it's not very prescriptive about what that's going to be used for. And so that would be the only reason. The other thing is that we do have these revenue losses that are sort of at our doorstep. And so that sort of makes sense, but
Gotcha.
effectively, there's not a whole lot of difference to be.
Okay, thank you. My second question is in regards to the ambulance transport rates. We haven't adjusted those since the formation of the RFA. I don't know what they were before. My question really is, what impact does this have on the person that has ridden in the ambulance after we increase these? I don't know what the average post, I've been trying to find this information, the average cost of an ambulance ride after insurance in this state, and how would that affect that for our taxpayers?
So it shouldn't affect it should have minimal or no effect because we don't balance bill and we're not actually allowed to by state law anymore. So if an insurance, so this would change, this changes the amount that we would bill commercial payers. So I think Commissioner Faranoff correctly noted that Medicare and Medicaid programs pay what they pay. They aren't affected by our rates. So commercial payers are though. And so this would primarily affect commercial payers. If a commercial payer steps in and pays a bill, we don't balance bill the rest of that out to the patient. We also don't pursue collections of any bills.
What's the definition of a commercial payer in the way that you're using it?
Like any sort of insurance.
Just the insurance. Okay,
Yeah.
so the insurance. Okay, got it. All right. Or if somebody doesn't have insurance, the bill that they would receive.
It gets written off by the levy.
I understand that part too, but I just wanted to kind of understand. Okay, thank you.
Other questions on this part of the presentation? Okay.
Okay, thank you all.
So, Chair Kenny, if the board has any questions of staff, as you go and review the budget, the executive staff, which is the three ACs, and the three directors, feel free to reach out to any one of them, or myself. And we look forward to the continued conversation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That takes us forward then in the agenda to item 10B, which is the commissioner's sub-budget for the 2025 budget. And turn that over to Ms. Blankenship to talk a little bit about that.
Good evening. Same budget that was presented to you at the last budget presentation meeting. And again, just to reiterate, I prepared the budget for a possible retreat in 2025 to reflect the ongoing Dish with the Commish events each month. And I added an increase in training and travel expenses as we've seen an increase in commissioner attendance to those events. And I added expenses for ongoing services with our redistricting consultant for 2025. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to help answer them.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Chan?
Yeah, I lost my page here, but I would like to increase our education wise, because I haven't lost it this year. I haven't taken any of the classes. Now I'm kind of more retired now. So I think our organization become much more bigger and complex. If we have admins or coming in, I'd like to increase that fund for all commissioner. I think we do need more education to me.
Commissioner Chan, are you talking about like general training?
Yeah, yeah,
Because there's currently 6,000 in there.
$6,000, yeah. So I think that has been spent for a while.
That's probably true.
Yeah, having increased for a while. So I think,
Are we on track to use all of that this year?
We are. We have a large contingency attending the WFCA conference this year
yeah,
in Spokane. And
good.
yeah, it has increased substantially, the attendance.
how many people are going?
3 commissioners and 3 staff.
Oh, okay,
Well, the board is bigger than it has been in the past, so.
yeah.
Ms. Blankenship, do you have a suggestion on what increase gets the job done in 2025?
Possibly another $3,000 should be sufficient.
3,000?
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I'm really encouraging all the commissioners should really go to the convention, especially it's coming here. And then SNUD, that class is good. But I can look at some online, some other education too. I'll come back to next time to see, I think what I can see, what other increase I think we should get.
Well, why don't we plan on $3,000 increase from currently scheduled for 6,000 and move that to 9,000? If that'll get the job done for 2025. And we can talk about it at the next meeting also.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Blankenship, anything else for the commissioners? I'll call it sub-budget.
Nope, I received no comments from any commissioners, so just let you know that as well.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the commissioners on the commissioners 2025 budget? Okay, well, we'll talk about it again next week. Okay, and that moves us forward in the agenda then to item 10C, which is this is new. Sorry, station cost estimates for station 22.
So thank you. I'm going to actually turn it over to Chief Curtis. I know we have Brian Harris on from TCA. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief Curtis. Chief Curtis.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty here. Can you see looks like we're okay. I'll get into presentation mode. All right, I apologize. I haven't operated this way before, so my apologies. Good evening again. I'm here to talk about the update for Fire Station 22 on North Road. The board had asked staff to provide an update on some cost estimates. Along with me this evening, I'd like to acknowledge our principal architect, Brian Harris with TCA. He's available online to field any questions at the end of my presentation. So just to recap where we're at, we are in phase 3 of several phases when it comes to the design and specification and build of this fire station. This fire station is a 13,000 square foot facility located on North Road, which is just south of Linwood High School. We have plans for a 2-story structure, 2 bays to accommodate a fire engine and an aid/medic unit with the options to store a reserve unit in the back of the bay on that second bay. The new facility will support, I'm sorry, pardon my pause here there we go. Will support these units and the scope of the project involves site development on an existing property that was a single family structure. The construction of the fire station involves the offices, workspaces, sleeping quarters, kitchen, day room, and amenities that are typical of a fire station. With a modern fire station, we've recognized the need for decontamination and following the pandemic as far as exposure control. The fire station has a modern design for exercise room and also some construction characteristics that'll support bunker gear cleaning and storage. We're projected to have completion of the fire station in fall of 2026. So this is an accelerated timeline and we're moving with purpose and it's been supported very much so to this point with TCA and staff. So just to orient you a little bit to where this fire station is, the yellow on this map represents the property, which is about, I'd say, 1/8 of a mile south of Linwood High School, almost directly across the street from Floral Hills Cemetery. Our build team is Assistant Chief Jason Isotelo and myself, as well as a team of officers and firefighters from the line. Currently, we represent one of each rank. The logistics team is myself, Shane Jensen as our purchasing manager, and our facilities specialist, Seth Kurtz. TCA is represented with Brian Harris, who's here this evening, Rebecca Chow, and Michelle Leola. So this is the part that we've been all looking for is what are we doing with the schematics and conceptual design. So this is where we're at today. This is a steel structure that's on a piece of land that's pinched down by a couple constraints. When we talked with the capital facilities team last week, we identified that we have an easement to the north, which is represented on the left part of the fire station. That's the Puget Sound Energy natural gas pipeline. And then to the south and east, which is represented on the upper right portion of the fire station, that is a wetlands area. So we have some constraints with this property. This is an ideal location for South County Fire. So the work is well intentioned to try and get this fire station into this location because of its proximity to the growing community of that Hilltop, Floral Hills, and South Martha Lake area. So this is a two-story concept. In this picture, you'll see that the bay doors are represented, a community entry point, and a staircase that's in the middle. This station does not have fire poles, but it does have an elevator. We'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. This is a view also from North Road, and you can see conceptually what we're looking at. And this area to the left would represent the easement. These are the rear portions of the station. In concept, it would be an employee coming into work. This is what they would see. The glass on the left portion of the station is the workout room, and it does have the ability, we've learned through our staff, that a lot of firefighters have would like the luxury of working outside as well. So there's an opportunity for a bay door to open up. It's a rather modest design, but allows them the ability to go outside and work outside as well as inside the gym. We were asked to bring some numbers forward. This is where we're at today after a refresh of the cost estimates. We're looking at a 13,472 square foot station. We're projected at $9 million roughly, along with $2.7 million in site work. And then you can see the numbers there. All in all, we're looking at $17.7 million structure. Project development costs represent approximately 49% of the development of the building and site work. The initial cost estimate that was brought forward in June has pretty much stayed the same. So we added some features, we made some adjustments through the design process, working with our development team and our architecture team, but we basically stayed in the same footprint of cost. So I want to acknowledge that and thank everyone for their efforts. We were asked to talk about what does it look like currently with electric vehicles. The first portion of this slide represents what's required by code. So in the parking lot, we're required to have charging capabilities for 2 vehicles, and we have to have conduit and prep work for 2 additional parking spaces. This is a state of Washington and code requirement. So that's the cost breakdown under those aspects. Alternatively.
Chief Curtis.
Yes, sir.
I think Commissioner Teoflag has a question.
For the EV charging stations, is that just for employees or for the public as well?
Currently, this would be in the, I don't have a solid answer to that. So I'll defer that to Brian when we get to that side. My understanding is that's for employees, but I can't be 100% sure. So I'll have that question for Brian in a minute. Photovoltaic upgrade, which is a fancy term for solar panels. Due to the limitation of the station and roof structure, we would be capped at going to 23 kilowatts. I am not an expert when it comes to that, but I understand that that's a small aspect of how much the station consumes in a day. Currently, it's designed at 6 kilowatts. I have to confess that I'm not exactly an expert when it comes to the solar aspect. So that's another question that Brian will be able to pick up for me. He assured me he knows where we're going with this and he'll be able to cover my back. So thank you. Question came up about the 6th bedroom. We do have a cost estimate. We're looking at $54,000 if we remove that 6th bedroom. Also, we considered what it would look like to have an electric fire engine in this fire station. There's some opportunity to build this and accommodate those needs today, build that infrastructure so that it's not a large upgrade later. These are small costs today at $75,000, along with upgrading the upgrade would be $26,000. But in order to have this fire station charging while power is out, we would have to upgrade our generator, which would be a $75,000 cost. Together, we're looking at just over $100,000 to prep this fire station for electric fire engines. My understanding is one of our neighboring agencies, I don't remember if it's Bellevue or Redmond, has just received their new fire engine, and it is an EV, and that was supported not only through their general fund, but through grants as well. So that is something that's on our radar. Also being your logistics chief for fleet that we're considering in the future. So where we are on our timelines right now, the yellow represents basically the conclusion of phase 3 as we're starting to enter into the next phase. Unless there's a board objection, your staff is recommending and asking for your approval to continue moving forward with the development and design and construction of Fire Station 22 to include the upgrades to prep the fire station for an EV fire engine and pumper and upgrade the generator in the parking lot. We don't believe that the cost versus benefit is there right now for the solar panel upgrade due to the limitations of the roof structure. And I know Brian's taking notes right now, and he'll be able to speak more intelligently about that when he takes it over. So that pretty much concludes my portion of the update on Fire Station 22, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions as you may have them.
Liaison Swisher and then Commissioner Lawrence.
I see the land use permit part, since it has wetlands, is it true just wetlands that you only have to go for the easy permits? Or is there an HPA involved on the property?
I couldn't speak to that.
Well, Brian, no.
Brian will be taking notes.
Okay. Yeah, I just,
It's a fair
I
question.
ask because HPAs take forever. We actually lost a project because our HPA took so long that we had got our grant funds extended twice for the project, and when we canceled it, we still didn't have our HPA.
I don't believe we're at that extent.
Good.
And relatively speaking, this is a small footprint for wetlands.
Mhm.
However, we must still mitigate it and
Right.
and recognize it.
Right. And that's part of why I asked the question, because,
Good question. Thank you.
right, regular ones, yeah, you can get around those. HPA, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lawrence and Commissioner Chan.
And you want to keep the 6th bedroom, right?
Staff's recommendation is to keep the 6th bedroom and ask for your consideration for future flexibility at the fire station.
Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, God, amazing that. Is Commissioner Wood is still here? Hello?
Your mic, please. And he is.
Is Commissioner Wood is still here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. All right. I think he reminded us that the last bond we have is $19 million building free station. So this is a really, yeah.
Well,
But, couple of questions. So this is I think, Station 11 have upstairs. But so this will be our first own station have us upstairs, right?
well, currently Fire Station 11 is a shared facility with the Sheriff's
Right.
Department.
Before it was our headquarters.
Correct.
That's why we had all this stuff. Okay.
And then also our Fire Station 20 in Esperance has an upstairs as well. And they have a staircase, but not an elevator. And I was going to elaborate on the fire station, and I
So
forgot to mention.
what was, who was upstairs? Bedroom or what was that?
Fire Station 20 in Esperance has a kitchen, a day room, and bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom to support that. That's the typical footprint of the upstairs. This fire station will have the bedrooms on the lower level to increase our turnout time.
Yeah.
Or decrease our turnout time, I should say.
So what's upstairs then?
There will be a kitchen, there'll be a living space, day room, a couple bathrooms. Generally speaking, it's the crew living quarters. The thought process when we worked with TCA is during the daytime, there wouldn't be any issues navigating the stairs. They're up and there wouldn't be much delay with turnout after hours as they're responding from bedrooms. The bedrooms are on the lower level.
Okay,
And they literally open up to the hallway that dumps into the bay. Due to constraints with exposure from diesel exhaust and contaminants, there's now these airlocks that are built in. So the bedrooms no longer are allowed to open up into the bay per se. They have to go into an adjoining hallway and then an airlock system.
okay. Is there any community room there?
This is a station that was identified not to have a community room, and we were restricted by the property itself because we were pinched down due to the easement and the wetlands.
Okay, and then it's a drive-through, I assume?
Again, same story. We had to engineer in some turnarounds for the pumper on the front side of the property because we're not able to drive around due to the constraints of the
Oh,
property.
so it's not a drive-through?
Not a drive-through, sir.
Okay, we all debate, before they always want drive-through and then we don't want doesn't cut any costs.
As we become more dense and we become more populated, we're finding that it's more difficult and cost prohibitive to buy property, and it's becoming very difficult. So we have to work with what we have. And
Okay, then one more question
Yes, sir.
is that I assume this will give us, right now, 21st, the call is not as much to cover area, but this one will really increase our coverage.
yes, sir. I'm speaking a little bit without the direct knowledge, other than my understanding is that this moves the station further north into that projected call volume for the area that's growing up East Linwood,
Right,
South Martha Lake area.
and they cover Mill Creek too, can help out?
Potentially, this could dump into Mill Creek as a secondary or tertiary station for Station 76 and support. It would directly support stations 21, 18, 15, and 76. So strategically located very well.
So my question is that 21, are we going to sell the land, tear it down? What was
For
it?
the
old
old Station
22?
22? I don't think we know yet.
I trying to, yeah.
I don't know if we know yet. We haven't got to that place in time about what to do with Station 22. I will tell you, right now, we need places to put stuff. So,
But
as
that
we,
is-
as
Is that
we,
centrally located? It's not centrally
no,
located?
but if you look out back,
Okay,
as we've looked at the pandemic and we're trying to get 6 months worth of stuff. So, 6 months worth of stuff to stay in the fight if we have another pandemic or something thereof. If you look next to the warehouse, we've got like 30 pallets wrapped outside that are rainproof. We don't have enough storage space. And we've got apparatus that stay outside. So what we do with the old Station 22, we haven't talked about yet. I think it'll be as we get closer to the work that those guys are doing with it and we move forward and start building. Part of the capital facilities plan, the subcommittee group we talk about, obviously that'll be a topic of conversation. And what do we do with it? It's not going to be a fire station for us anymore. There's some things we can do it in the short term. In the long term, we probably don't need it. The question is, what do we do with it?
my question is that, actually my thinking, I can justify because if we sell the land, I assume we'll get some money back. So we'll be, deflating the cost in there. All right, thank you.
Do we want, so,
Any other questions, sir?
go ahead.
Just an observation here on this, the slide that you had up with the cost analysis. It looks like the cost for the site work didn't really change at all. It went up a little bit, but the amount of site work increased dramatically. So the price came down. What, could you just I'm kind of just confused by that one piece of information. I don't know if it's an error on the slide or if,
No,
I believe
Commissioner,
it's
that's
almost 100,000 square feet of site work versus 35, and Yeah.
Outside of knowing that the scope of work changed, I would be, if you're okay with it, I'd like to defer that to Brian Harris as well, if
Okay.
he can speak more in depth on that.
All right.
I don't believe we are asking for any board action other than just approval to keep moving forward. I'd like to turn it over to our principal architect, Brian Harris, and let him take it away from here.
Sounds good. Good evening, Mr. Harris.
Okay, good evening, board, commissioners and staff. I'll address a couple of the questions regarding the site work. You know, with everything, as we get more technical information, we actually reduce the developable footprint for the station instead of pushing out further. You know, those costs reduced. So this is actually about a $19,000 site work difference from where we're at concept design. So it's not dramatically different in nature. We've reduced the amount of paving and various things like that. We know there is that wetland. What we are doing, we're not actually moving wetlands. We're just working in that buffer and buffer averaging and doing some wetland enhancements in those buffer areas. So that's kind of generally where the number, why that number is lower. Overall, we're only about $45,000 difference in terms of where we're at the conceptual design phase for the construction cost. So when you add total project cost, it brings it up to about 67,000 roughly. Regarding the PV or the EV charging, there was another question that showed up. Currently, there is a requirement to do EV charging in that public area. There essentially is a charger that's required for the handicap stall, as well as one of the additional stalls at the front of the station. The back of the station includes a kind of EV ready stall, two stalls really, and an EV capable stall. So EV ready essentially means that it has conduit and wire pulled to that point. EV capable means it essentially has conduit to that point. And that's really kind of code mandated issues. And please stop me if you have any questions. We also talked a little bit about the PV array on top of the roof. We had in the base budget essentially 4% of the building's energy being charged by those photovoltaic solar panels. That is kind of state mandate. The alternate brought that up to 14% of the total system. So it jumps from a 6 kilowatt array to a 23 kilowatt array. In our opinion, right now it's a really long payback when we're dealing with that small amount of panels. The roof is essentially structured to be PV ready. So at any point in time in the future, you can add additional photovoltaic panels, on that roof. So that's really a decision on your end. We mentioned the total amount of 23 kW. If we're to build out the maximum, as the design progresses, there's probably a possibility of putting more up there even beyond that. And it could sustain that if that was a goal. Let's see, let me touch on the electrification of apparatus. So in the base budget, there's 480 three-phase power being brought into the building. That's what's available. And it's just really prudent to put that in at this point based on just anticipated electrical needs.
and that would accommodate the electrification of apparatus. The alternates essentially include, so there's two alternates. One would be to increase the generator infrastructure for the $27,000. And that essentially is just providing feeders to those locations. We would have a 1200 amp service that would allow that to happen. And then the additional generator sizing to upscale that from a 250 kW generator to a 500 kW generator, that's that additional $75,000 cost. So what you're not getting with this system is essentially the EV equipment in the bay. So you would still have to provide essentially the box for that and some drops dependent on what apparatus is selected at that point in time. Some of the manufacturers are selling that with the sale of the apparatus. So that's currently what the plan is for some of the jurisdictions we're working with. Others are just installing it, like City Bellevue. They're installing the box for a single apparatus right now. So there's a variable as these apparatus advance, those will change, and we'd be really reluctant, I think, to put in these boxes basically at this point in time until there's a full understanding as to what apparatus would actually be used in this facility. But it would be set with a generator, and it'd be a fairly easy installation because everything's in place for that. I don't think there's anything else. I think those were the questions that were brought up today.
Mr. Harris, did you want to say anything about the elevator?
Oh, yes. So, it was interesting. There's mention of Title II today for the ADA. Elevator is required for this facility. It's been required since 1990, even though a lot of jurisdictions really didn't comply with that. So it's been around for decades. It's a very simple hydraulic elevator, pretty bare bones, and that does service that second floor. So it is ADA driven, and it would be required by the county as well, even though they don't enforce Title II of the ADA, but they're fully aware of that. Regarding accessibility on the second floor, we've had conversations with the county, and they essentially are allowing us to make the restrooms and kitchen counters to be adaptable. So if there ever is a need for an accessible accommodation on that second floor, it could be installed. The ground floor will still have an ADA accessible, fully accessible restroom off of the lobby.
Okay, Liaison Swisher, then Commissioner Lawrence.
I have one question.
Yep. Go ahead, Liaison Swisher.
Just because we've been having these conversations with our fire marshal lately, have we looked into the insurance for having EV inside of our buildings, since we're having problems in some of our jurisdictions with insurers not wanting EV charging stations inside of structures?
Yeah, so currently what's planned, there would be no EV charging in the station, even if those alternates were taken. It's really just infrastructure that goes out to the generator and back to the service panel that we're talking about today. At some point in time, if you do elect to move to electric apparatus, there'd be permit requirements associated with the installation of that equipment.
So in addition, we've not looked into what our insurer would do when we move towards the path of electric fire engines. We haven't had that conversation with him yet. And what does that mean? I think where we're going with the plan, the design for the station is to get everything up to the box, right? So the plumbing we're talking about, the conduit being run, the generator, all set us up, but that wouldn't impact because you wouldn't be able to charge because the charger's not there. So before we would actually be able to go and, when we start if we get to the place where we're talking about EV response units, we'd have to have that full conversation. I think by the time we get there, Redmonds and Bellevues will already have already paved the way and said, don't do this or make sure you have this before you get there. So I think it's a great question. It's a good reminder for staff, just to keep it in the back of their mind. And we talk to the insurance company quite a bit. We can start asking that question and stay ahead of it.
Commissioner Lawrence and then Commissioner Chan.
Yes, Brian, back to elevators. Even if there wasn't an ADA requirement, isn't it a pretty good idea to have an elevator for just carrying stuff up and down?
Yeah, there's all kinds of functionality if that's certainly desired when you move in, when you bring stuff up. We've had some departments actually use the elevators for training as a training prop. It wouldn't be customized as such, but they certainly have used those in the past. So
Yeah, I mean, if there wasn't this other requirement, as an architect designer, would you actually recommend one just because they're kind of practical in a lot of ways?
I would, especially in a public building where you may have station tours, you may have commissioners going through, you may have public going through. So
yeah. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, actually, I one of my bigger questions in here. Commissioner Wood has probably remembered that, or you guys have we used to have one chief kind of responsible for the liaison supervising the constructions and everything else. I always questioning, is that much, do you guys, including that kind of a liaison supervising person in the budget?
So I can't speak for the budget, but I know that when I've been asked this question before, that as we go and do because we still have to go out and do the RFP, and we haven't talked about that component yet, but part of that RFP, at least where I sit today, is we'd have some form of project management support to support Chief Isotelo and Chief Curtis with where we go with this. And there's a couple different ways it could be done. We're not quite there yet. So what they're talking about here is the price to build the station. This would be the way I understand things right now, that would be something that would be above the top, and we do that as part of, my assumption would be to do as part of the RFP. Unless, and like I said, I haven't reached back and talked to Brian about it, about the other options we have, but I think like we said before, we would bring in as a part of this specific project, and then bring in some form of project management support to support Chief Isotelo and Chief Curtis and the rest of the team as we go and finish the construction of the building.
But I thought it wouldn't be more efficient, because I don't know any one of you would be really in the construction kind of expertise. But I thought if it was the same money, we probably can get one to do it, and rather than take on the additional duty for them.
Yeah, I think we still, whether we bring somebody in to do project management for us or not, you still need to have some influence from the fire department, because they're going to turn to somebody, whether it's me, Chief Hudson or James to say, all right, here's a decision point. Construction is all fine.
Right.
This is you, the owner, decision point you got to make. So it doesn't take away from somebody from the RFA being a point of contact to answer those kind of questions and be able to speak on behalf of us.
Commissioner Wood is probably remember, who was the person that kind of for our project, kind of supervising all this project? I know 18, 10, we don't really know.
Chief Maddox went ahead and did a lot
Chief
of that.
Matters, yeah.
Yep.
Does he has a construction background or he just, how the whole
He
thing
he
works?
was, excuse me, he was like the rest of us as far as, if you want to call it dabbled in construction, had a pretty good idea what was going on. But a lot of it just goes back to the experience we got from TCA too.
Oh, okay. I'm just, since we're getting big now, a lot of repair and thing, we might be in-house, might be save a lot of time from you guys and that type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation as we finish out the facilities plan and making sure we don't. I think that's a topic of conversation. I think when we initially were having the conversation for 22, we're going to look at this as an off and not hire. In other words, I would not recommend hiring a construction project manager for the RFA for what we're doing with Station 22. I think it's something we should consider as we talk about how we're going to do the full capital cities plan. What does that look like? But also realize that a lot of the work we do in the RFA, I don't need that person to do our day-to-day maintenance. So it's a conversation we still have to have, Commissioner Chan. But I think that's a conversation we'll have through 2025, and I think be part of what we bring forward with the full-blown capital cities plan and where we want to go with it as an organization.
Okay, I just want to make sure all costs are being considered and not escaping.
Yeah, and excuse me, Commissioner Chan, as part of the total project budget that we've identified today, 2% of that budget is allocated for a construction/project manager, if that's a direction you'd like to go.
Okay.
So there it is accounted for.
Okay, are there any board objections to continuing in the path identified by Chief Curtis?
I just have one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
I saw in here, I guess we talked about the electrical side of things, the option to remove that sleeping room. What, I mean, the square footage wouldn't change. It just wouldn't be space outfitted as a room, correct?
You essentially, if there's two different options. If we did remove that square footage, that accounts for the 54,000 or so. If we just chose not to put, say, wardrobe units in that, it would be slightly less. There is a decision during the design process to primarily put loose furnishings in the sleeping rooms, the room proper. So it's not as big of an issue. It's really just the wardrobe units on the outside.
Okay. And is there a reason that we should consider removing that room, in your opinion, Chief?
I do not. I think 6 bedrooms is appropriate for Station 22.
Okay, thank you.
One more question. Commissioner Chan.
I know that, how many rooms, this is the first time ever, the 6 rooms, are we all, the sleeping quarter now is each one have their own room rather than sharing it? Before they sharing it, right? There's some station.
Yeah, I think outside of Station 22, Station 23, but all our new stations, and I believe Linwood 76 is older station, but everybody has their own dorm room, yeah. Everybody has their own sleeping quarter.
Oh, sleeping quarter. Okay. And I'm just curious, what's the chances of, if you're because 1 floor, the chances of they go on the call is when they're eating and that type of thing. Most of them, you spend a lot of time in the kitchens and the big area, right? So I'm just saying that we're taking more time now to go down.
Yeah,
So,
but based on that station and the lot location, we would have preferred to be a Rambler style station. We just didn't have the space. So that one required a 2-story building. And I know, because one of the things that we did through the whole capital studies planning process is the station design, the priority number one was getting out of the station, right? And so I know when the group's talking about if they're up and they're up there during wake hours and getting from upstairs down the stairs to they've shortened that to the best that we can with just because of the challenge with the space. So I'm pretty confident that the whole premise about where we were going, and we started this with the facilities plan at the very, very beginning, if you remember, turnout time was a huge priority. And if we could build and engineer the station such that optimize that, that's what we did. And once again, we had some limitations with the site. And you always do, because you never get perfect, although the location's perfect. I think we're doing the best with that still being the priority, which is getting out of the station quickly. And in the way they've configured it and the work they've done I think what we're doing is appropriate for that site. And I think the way the station's engineered and what I know about it is everything about the design has been getting out of the station as quick as they can.
my question, usually daytime you get more calls, right? Versus nighttime. So I thought, okay, I was hoping you bring back the pole so I can go down there and slide down.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so no objections. Chief, you have your direction to continue moving
I'm
forward.
great. Thank you very much. We'll keep you up to date.
Sounds good. Let's take a 11-minute break to 9 o'clock and we'll be in a brief recess.
Great. Thank you.
Number 10D. Resuming our meeting at item number 10D, which is Snohomish County Emergency Medical Services for discussion with Chief Eastman.
Good evening again. I know you've noticed, I didn't tell you this at my chief's report, I'm a little bit shy staff. Chief Isotell is on vacation. Chief Maxwell's at a training. It's called Focus Training. It's really unique, and it's the up and coming leaders in the fire service on the West Coast. And not surprisingly, they asked Sean to go. So I'm going to fill in for Sean tonight and kind of give you an update of where we are with the county EMS or the EMS task force and where they are. After the briefing that Sean gave you guys, we had a subsequent meeting. I wasn't able to attend. I was back home in Minnesota because of my mother. And they had a meeting at the county chief's level, and I would say it was a unique meeting that went a lot of different places. And I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to tell you what I know about what the results and where things are moving forward. I think we're at a place from the chief's, at least the chief's point of view, that what we briefed you on at the last briefing, the methodology for funding, which is assessed value based, which as I think, and I was online, so I didn't get to actually see all you when I was talking. I support that. I support how we're funding this office. I think if you go back, one of the things that they look at when you look at our size population, they look at King County, they look at Thurston County, they look at Whatcom County and Skagit, which are all countywide EMS offices. What I mean by that is that they actually control the EMS levy money, right? And so because of that, they're the ones who put the EMS levy on the ballot. The county collects on behalf, and then it's distributed out from the county EMS office. We don't function that way in Snohomish County, and I want everybody on the board to know where we're going is not giving this new EMS, whatever we're creating here, having the authority to do an EMS levy. That's all staying with us, right? We're not going to emulate King County. We're not going to emulate and have countywide EMS in that sense. But we needed to get to a place where they wanted to be the best parts of that, right? The ability to do that work. And so one of the ways to make it look like that and fund it without giving them taxing authority, because we would never, and there's not a fire department in the county that would give up their EMS levy for the privilege of having a county EMS office, is to actually fund it with a half a penny or 0.45 of a penny and have it be AV based. Because when you look at the countywide systems, that's how they're done. I actually helped come up with that. As a result of that, I know with that methodology, we'd pay a little bit more than we do under the existing formulary. Because, Southwest County's up and coming, it's growing, and it's going to continue to grow. And as a result, we're more dense, and we have more AV, and hence a larger burden of the cost of that office will be borne by us just because of AV and where we are. And I think that's okay. I think if you look at what we're trying to do and what this office is trying to do, that's fair in my view. The other piece that we talked about, and I know we talked about last time, is the governance. I've been in this county for 28 years, and EMS has always been something we do. And I'm not specifically talking Snohomish or South County. South County has always been a little bit more forward leaning, not than everybody in the county, but we've done different things. We've funded it differently. We've put different priorities on it within our organization, and it's a central core function of our organization. That's not the case in all organizations. Yeah, fires all of it, and EMS is something we do because we get an EMS levy. What the governance does with this is it puts 6 fire chiefs in the governance role that oversees this office. Why that's important is that hasn't happened in Snohomish County since I've been here. It's done at the EMS trauma steering committee level, and it's usually paramedics that raise their hand and said, I'll go do that for the overtime, or somebody who actually has a desire to go do that and does it. Rarely is it chiefs. And so I think the most important part about what's happening and where we're going is the governance, because it puts us fire chiefs looking at EMS county and having us provide that governance. And what that then means is the county EMS office reports to group. So I think in where we're going with the task force, that's the most important aspect. I will say that they've actually are rolling back. Initially, in this last chiefs meeting, they had a vote. They had people that were voting yes. Something's wrong with my mic. Something voting yes for a different budget than what I presented to you guys last month or the last meeting. And half of us voted no, or five agencies voted no, and other people voted for a more expensive budget. Well, in order for this to work, the chiefs wanted everybody to be on the same page together. I think we have a plan. I don't know exactly what it is because it's being done with the task force leadership, Chief DeMarco, Sean, Chief Waller, Gary Lingle, and Roy Waugh, along with the county or the Fire Chiefs Association. And I think we're going back to the funding and the budget that we talked about our last meeting, which I can stand behind. We pay a little bit more. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're paying the employees what we should be paying them. And the other large dollar amount more than what we pay for today. The fact that we pay 911 rent for office space, and we pay for them to do some of the administrative HR finance functions, and there's a cost associated with that. Other than that, outside of just some normal things are costing more money because of where we are today, for the most part, the rest of it's pretty status quo. And so we do pay a little bit more. I can justify why we're paying more because it's salaries that we probably should be paying people appropriately. and then housing at 911. And so what we get from it's the same as what we're doing now. We do pay a little bit more, but I think that's appropriate. Where we're still not done yet is the ILA for the board. I think you saw a draft. That ILA hasn't gone out to all the chiefs. You got a preview version of it because Sean sat on the task force. So where we are now is we'll probably go reset to what we talked about at the last meeting with the budget and the how we fund it and the governance. And then we have to then get the task force to finish the work on the ILA and get it back so the fire chiefs can make comments on it. So they can go back, make appropriate edits before we bring it back to our governances. And obviously there's going to be a point in time where the governance are going to want to weigh in. If we do our job right from the chief's level, there probably should be very little edits made by the legislative bodies, because hopefully we can interject and maybe make it so there's not a whole lot of edits made by the commissioners of the respected agencies. Along with that, it's the SLA, and I for the life of me, I can't remember what SLA stands for. Services something. It's the agreement between the new entity and Snow 911 for them to do and house the work. I've made comment that I thought a 5-year no out commitment was too long, and I recommended a 3-year commitment. I don't know where that's going to go. I'm anticipating that where this goes moving forward is we'll get the fire chief stuff done, and we all get concurrence with the budget that I presented, Sean presented to you guys, and the other 2 aspects. They'll go back and finish the work on the ILA and the SLA. The chiefs will have an opportunity to weigh in, make the edits appropriate, and then bring the whole package, the stuff we've already talked to you about, the ILA that the board would have to approve, and then the SLA. And the reason the SLA is important is because, this is who this agency is going to work with, and we're part of it, and give the board the whole package for the board to, and for us, it'd be, a couple meetings of, introducing it to the board, taking the board's comments. If there's things that the board would like us to go and make edits on it, we can go take that back. Ultimately then, hopefully getting to a place where there's consensus. Probably at the end of the day, not everybody gets everything they want, but we get to a place where, we can bring it back to the board. We've had plenty of time. We have the whole package. And for the board to then ultimately, if everything goes well, make a decision and approve the interlocal agreement and move forward. I know I've talked to commissioners independent and, but I think where we are right now, I think there's some great positives and things that will help guide us as a county into the future. I think there's, because we've been supported so well from the board and the public that the needs we have with regards to county EMS offices is different than a lot of the other agencies in the county, because we've got staff and we're staffed differently and I believe staffed more appropriately. But I think Commissioner Kenny, you said at the last meeting, having a third party look at how we do business, not from operational, but from a QI, quality assurance, quality improvement perspective, to make sure that the medicine that the medics are providing and the medicine that our EMTs are providing in the street, and having a third party look at that, make sure we're compliant with protocol, we're compliant with patient care procedures and those things is not inappropriate. It's appropriate to have, Dr. K, who's currently the MPD, and somebody in the office to do that work. And for us to be able to tell, we're not running below the radar. We have people looking at what we do and providing us great feedback so we can improve our system. And I think there's value in that. And I think this gets us, it gets us a long way. And I've been a very vocal person as this process has started. And part of it is to make sure that the EMS office is doing what the RCW say they need to do. You know, I don't need them to do my job. I don't need them to interfere with what the governance needs to do. I have staff that has work that they should do, and a lot of the work that's done is bargaining at work, and it needs to be done by the employees that I employ here in the RFA, that we employ here in the RFA. So I think it's positive, even though it's been a little bit of a rocky road. I think there's been some perceptions that aren't true. I'll just be transparent with the board. There are some folks that think that me specifically, have done some things, you know, on a backdoor dealing side. Rest assured with the board, that's not been the case. The two meetings that I was invited to by the chair of the council or chair of the task force. The folks that think we did some underhanded dealing just didn't realize that the two meetings that I was at, I was invited to both. And there wasn't anything on the backside going on. And it was just folks not knowing everything that was going on with it. And so I'm very comfortable with where we are right now. And as I'll take a phrase from Commissioner Kenny, the devil is in the details of the ILA and the SLA. But where we currently are right now, I can support where the fire chiefs currently stand. But there's work to be done to bring the whole package, so the board's not just looking at one piece. And I'm hoping that happens. I think it's going to take longer than people think. I'm hoping that we can get the chief stuff done, you know, between October and November. I think we have commissioner groups that meet one meeting a month, and they're going to need more than one meeting in some groups to do that. And so I see, I'd like to be able to do what we normally do, is bring it to a work session when we have the whole package, have a conversation with the board, take input from the board. And we need to build in time, and I think they're working on that, build in time where if you got legislative bodies that want to see some different things in an ILA, they need time to go and amend the ILA, do that work, and then bring it back. And so I don't suspect that there's 18 fire departments, 2 of them are cities. I can't imagine that 16 Board of Commissioners aren't going to want to have some kind of different language in a local agreement that ties you for 3 years moving forward. So that's kind of my update. I think we have a good move forward. It's just going to take a little bit more time. If with that, I'll take any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Lawrence.
Yes, when you come back to us with more information, that extra cost that we pay, how much that would be, and also about Commissioner Kenny's proposal or suggestion last meeting that we host it instead of 9/11. And something written up and sent to the commissioners explaining, well, we pay for a doctor and now we're going to pay for another one. And in other words, address some of the issues that have been a concern, and how that's how things have changed since that last meeting.
Yeah, I think we can do that. I think we kind of owe that whole story, right? Because we've been paying county EMS for many years. They've had a countywide doc. We've had our own physician, and you know, from my level or my perspective, their roles are different. And so we do owe you the rest of that, I think. And we'll do that when we get closer to the time. And like I said, I think I really do look forward to the rest of the conversation, because I think it's positive, and it is a positive step forward for Snohomish County.
Any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments? Great. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up, we have committee updates, starting with Capital Facilities Committee. That's Commissioner Lawrence.
Yes, I'm going to spend the next half hour repeating everything we heard tonight. So nothing to report. You heard it all.
All right, that takes us then to Finance and Human Resources with Commissioner Chan.
We're gonna have a meeting next Thursday. And you want to input anything, let me know.
Human resources?
All right, that takes us to Intergovernmental with Commissioner Wittes.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for putting up with me. Just to give you a heads up, we met with Edmonds 3 times now. We have an intergovernmental committee meeting next Monday and plan on reporting back to the board next week on kind of the progress of where we are.
Okay, that sounds good. Next up is Snow 911 with Commissioner Fernhoff.
Thank you, Chair. The Snow 911 Board did meet and we discussed an outage that affected the ability to dispatch. It was isolated to a particular equipment failure. It was not a system attack or cyber attack related. And they have installed a backup system that should act as a rollover should that particular device fail in the future. When the notifications were sent out, there was a little confusion because it was sent out in the form of what appeared to be a drill. So that was discussed to improve communications when there's an actual outage versus something that might be pre-planned. They made some appointments for temporary authority to hire some administrative assistants, rolled through radio equipment requests for mobiles here from South County and some other departments. And they're in the process of surplusing equipment from the old facility.
That all sounds good. Thank you. And that is the end of committee updates. That takes us on to commissioner comments. I want to start that and just remind you or let you know that we are hosting the Snow Isle Fire Commissioners meeting this coming Thursday. The meeting starts at 7 o'clock. We will have something to eat starting at 6:30. I anticipate probably about 10 commissioners or so. It is a hybrid meeting, so it'll be on Zoom also. And thanks to Ms. Blankenship for helping to facilitate that. I appreciate her making that happen. So if you can't join us in person, it'll be right here in this room. Consider joining us online on Zoom. You should have already gotten the invite on Saturday, but I'll be sending another one probably later tonight. So consider coming to the meeting. There'll be more conversation about the Snohomish County EMS from the task force member or members. Anyways, so Snow Isle on Thursday, 7 o'clock. Are there other commissioner comments? Other commissioner comments? Any other commissioner comments? No? Okay. Well, with that, then we have no other items on our agenda. Our next meeting is next Tuesday at 7 o'clock for our work session meeting. There being no other business, without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Jim.
Yes, sir.